everyone, and welcome back to Let's Read RWBY After the Fall. We are currently on part 3 of this stream series, which is covering, most hopefully, chapters 5 through 8, though we shall see how far we get. It looks like chapter 5 is relatively short, chapter 6 is also relatively short, chapter 7 is significantly longer, and chapter 8 looks incredibly short, in fact. We might just get through 4 chapters today. Very exciting. So, let us recap of what happened last episode, shall we? Yes, well, they were investigating why all these different traveling bands were suddenly being beset by awful, horrible, mixed emotions that have led the Grimm to defile them and destroy their settlements and force them to flee to each other back and forth. And yes, we are starting on chapter 5. I'm going to stop the act. It's hard to keep that going. Yes, so Coffee was investigating all these things, and they found I believe their name is the Korskins. The Caspians, sorry. Caspians. The Caspian family seem to be the originators of this. They started happening around the time that they joined the settlement of Tuff, I believe. Tuff? It's hard to keep straight. There's a lot of settlement names. It's very detailed in that regard. So they've been kind of traveling. We have Augustus, and the grandfather's name is Harry, is that right? Edward. I am all over the place today. So Gus and Edward, basically it was just revealed in the last chapter after being confronted, or at least somewhat confronted, with the fact that his grandfather sleepwalks. Gus admits that, well, to quote him, everything, the Grimm attacks, the evacuations, the mood bombs, it's all my fault. And that was where we left off on our cliffhanger. So, to finally jump into things, the Capulets, yeah, no, we're going full Shakespeare here. Actually, that wouldn't be a bad thing for RWBY. It could do with some Shakespearean writing. So we're going to jump in here to chapter 5. You're low-key shipping his with the Yatsu. You mean Fox with Yatsu, is that right? Interesting pair. I don't know if that really works out. All the same, general rules apply that I will reply to anything. If you super chat me, please remember there's a link in the description down below where you can super chat through Streamlabs. Streamlabs is way better. You get more bang for your buck, trust me. Anything below $20 will be addressed between chapters. Anything $20 will be addressed as soon as I see it. That's just a general rule that I follow. I think it's a good one to follow. I haven't had anyone give $20 yet, because apparently I'm not worth it, but, you know, that's how it goes. I gotta make my content better then, right, don't I? That just means I have to strive for better. So I will be better. Let's dive right into Chapter 5. And it looks like it's a beacon chapter, as you can tell, because they do these really nice things where they give you kind of an outline, that the outline of the character you'll be seeing things from. Chapter 5. My fault. I'm so sorry, Weiss. Ruby Rose trailed behind Weiss' knee in the ballroom, holding a napkin and an empty glass. I'll get your dress cleaned. Oh no, Coco thought. This is a crime. Red fruit punch. The prior contents of Ruby's glass was all over Weiss's white dress. She looked like she had a mortal wound in her side. Really? We're starting this off with an allusion to Volume 5? If only we had seen that in the show, that would have been a great piece of foreshadowing now, isn't it? Do you know how much this dress costs? Weiss whirled around to face the pest who was following her. Ruby stopped short. I don't know, maybe 20 lien? Coco snorted, but the other girls didn't notice. 20 lien? Where do you shop? Weiss folded her arms. I made this myself. Ruby looked down at her black and red dress and corset. That's a weird... I hate and then and. I really hate that in store instance. You can't find a cape like this in any thrift shop. Coco definitely liked the girls' ensemble. She only really trusted people who knew how to dress, which wasn't as much about what was fashionable or expensive, but finding the outfit that suited them. And of course, it had to function well and look damn good while fighting. Check, check, and check. I certainly don't go to any thrift shops, Weiss snapped, and it was a rhetorical question. They were all rhetorical questions because I don't really care about anything you have to say. Listen, don't worry about it. I just want to go back to my room and get some sleep. It's been a long day. Our room, Ruby reminded her. We're roomies now, remember? She punched a fist in the air. Team Ruby! Weiss sighed. For a brief, blissful moment, I had forgotten. See you later, Ruby. Don't wake me up when you come in. Even better, don't come in. Weiss turned sharply on her heel and stalked off. Ruby stared after her sadly. Then she noticed Coco watching her. Oh, hey, did you, see all that? Ruby asked. Nice moves back there, kid, Coco said. Ruby held up her glass. I'm so clumsy sometimes. And by sometimes I mean all the time. I didn't mean spilling the drink. That was hilarious, though. I mean, an honest mistake. Coco tilted her head after Weiss. Don't beat yourself up over it. I doubt it's the only dress Miss Schnee owns, and I can guarantee that she was overcharged for that one. I've only ever seen her wear the one dress, though, Ruby said. It's probably her favorite, at least. Or she has a closet full of the same combat skirts, Coco said. You always need backup. I'm Coco Adele, by the way. Coco strode towards Ruby and held out her hand. Ruby glanced at her full hands and tossed the napkin and glass behind her back. She winced when the glass shattered and then laughed nervously. She awkwardly shook Coco's hand. All right. Okay. Just casual property damage. That's fine, Ruby. Also, when is this taking place? Is this the dance? Did Ruby only meet Coco during the dance? Who wants a Raven and Crow book? Don't need a book about them. I'm Ruby Rose, she said. Or Ruby said. I know. The whole school knows about Beacon Academy's hotshot new team. Team Ruby. Ruby and Ruby. I bet that's going to get confusing. Which is your team? Ruby squinted at Coco. Team Coffee, Coco said. Last year's hotshot new team. Ruby's silver eyes widened. Your Team Coffee? Our reputation precedes us yet again, Coco said. Let me get you a new drink and some unsolicited advice from one leader to another. You see? Took in my idea already. Coco as the friggin' mentor figure for Ruby. How fitting is that, huh? The two of them walked back to the refreshments and Coco poured Ruby another glass of punch. She tossed it in a cocktail umbrella and gave it a little spin. A tiny umbrella? It's so cute, Ruby said. I thought you'd like it. And the cup is plastic. Please don't spill it on me. This is my favorite outfit, and I'd fly into a murderous rage if anything ruined it. Coco smiled sweetly. I can't tell if you're joking or not, Ruby said uncertainly. Good, Coco said. Listen, we're all impressed by your moves out there in the forest, Ruby. Kind of a rough start, but they're all there. They all are, am I right? Oh, that was nothing, Ruby slurped her punch noisily. Taking down a Nevermore isn't nothing, especially putting on a show like that for everyone, Coco said. Putting on a show? Ruby looked surprised. What do you mean? The way you toyed with the Grimm instead of going for the quick kill, mugging for the camera. You can kill them quickly? Ruby asked. It had taken the combined efforts of her, Blake, Weiss, and Yang to kill the giant flying Grimm that had attacked them among the ruins during their initiation. It had probably been luck as much as skill, and it was just a matter of circumstance that Ruby had dealt the killing blow, severing the Nevermore's head with her scythe, Crescent Rose. And she certainly hadn't been worrying about making it look good while she did it. She was just trying to survive. If you have the right weapon, Coco patted her handbag, and the right semblance, she thought. I do like your scythe, though. Thanks. Hold on, you were watching our initiation? Ruby asked. The whole school was. Every moment, Coco said. And you should probably remember that because your team is also going to be watching you all. Your team is also going to be watching you all the time, following your example, following your orders. As good as you are, Ruby, you have to be even better for them. You can't show weakness. You can't be weak because they're depending on you to keep them safe. I don't know if I can be that for them, Ruby said. Maybe Professor Osmond had an off day, mix up his files and drink too much coffee or something. Fat Man was right. What's in the cup? What's in the cup? There's no such thing as too much coffee, Coco said. Ruby laughed. Coffee and coffee. I bet that gets confusing, huh? Not really, Coco said. She didn't mention that Professor Osmond only drank hot chocolate. I don't know why. That's like a fan headcanon that people have had for years. I don't know why that's the amusing one to me. Oh, God. Okay, Ruby said. Okay. Ruby tried to drink her punch, realized her glass was empty, and then occupied herself pouring another. At this rate, she was going to have to hit the bathroom soon. God, don't I know that feeling, for Christ's sake. The headmaster knows what he's doing. Everyone here is on the right team, with the right role for the right reasons. It just takes a little while to figure out how you fit in, and what those reasons are, Coco said. Well, it still seems completely random to me, Ruby said. Professor Osmond told me something once, Coco said. Said, really annoying. When I asked him if I was supposed to be leading Team Coffee, she recalled his words as she repeated them for Ruby, a moment that she'd never forget. He said, the world is chaotic. We try to assert order on it and try to make sense of it. We organize into 4 kingdoms, 4 schools, teams of 4. But what if the only way to fight the chaos is to give in to it? All your planning, all your preparation can be undone in a moment of bad luck, or a split second in which you make the wrong decision or miss your mark just so. Thus, I believe that we need to embrace randomness as well, try to harness it and turn it into our advantage. We have to plan for the unexpected. Prepare ourselves for the situations we never could have anticipated or trained for. You and I are having this conversation because of a lifetime of choices and seemingly unrelated occurrences that nonetheless shaped who we are and led us here. The fact that 2 people met by chance and fell in love and had a daughter named Coco Adele is remarkable, don't you think? I do. Make no mistake, there is a higher power guiding our actions. Call it fate, call it destiny, call it the gods, or maybe it's simply the randomness of existence. Whatever it is, I have to trust that we are here for a reason, and while my methods might be unorthodox, they haven't failed me yet. You know, how uncomfortable would it be if, like, Coco's parents were divorced or something by the time she was born, or, you know, maybe they were never together, it was a one-night stand, or God help you, some kind of a worse situation, which I can imagine, but I'm not going to say out loud. That would make this conversation really uncomfortable for her, I imagine. Although she doesn't comment on that, so I guess he was right. Ruby took a deep breath. Deep? She said. I feel like I should have been writing that down. When Professor Osmond talks to you, it's important to take note. Something tells me that he'll be talking to Team RWBY a lot. If we're supposed to be a team, shouldn't we actually want to spend time with one another? Ruby said. Whites had gone back to their room. Yang was probably partying with her signal friends somewhere. Motherfuckers! Yeah! Right there! Like, oh, what? Low video output. What? Is this coming through okay, everyone? It's saying I'm the low video output. Is anyone buffering? Is that just me? Well, I'm going to keep reading, but if anyone times out, please be sure to message me. I want to make sure that I know if we cut out here. frustrating this. Okay, so I was saying, Yang probably is partying with her signal friends somewhere, and she could almost guarantee Blake was curled up with a book. RWBY suddenly felt lost and alone. When is this happening? When is this happening? Because there's a dress that RWBY's spilling punch on. Where did she get the punch? Is this just after initiation, I wonder? It might be. It looks fine in Lego. I'm not confident about that, but there's nothing I think I can do. I haven't really changed any of my settings, and my internet's just fine. Okay. So, yeah, RWBY's feeling lost and alone. I think this is happening just after initiation for Team RWBY themselves. Like, there's the punch thing during just after their initiation. It takes time to become a team, Coco said. But when it clicks, there's nothing like it, and nothing will be able to stop you. RWBY grinned. You have any more advice for me, Coco? Coco took off her glasses. Number 1, stop apologizing all the time for minor stuff. Sorry, RWBY covered her mouth. Save it for when you really screw up, Coco sighed and looked down. Number 2, don't screw up. If you fail, you fail. If you fail your team and the people you're trying to protect. Failure is not an option. She put her glasses back on. 3, it never hurts to fight with a little style. Have some fun with it. Being a huntress is the best feeling in the world. It's not at the dance, because this is before RWBY and Weiss have had their character arcs. And this seems to be also... If it was during the dance, Blake wouldn't be curled up with a book somewhere. Unless it's like right before Blake arrived. But then Yang is manning the entrance. So it's like, it's not the dance. It cannot be the dance. None of the timeline matches up if that's the case. Have fun, RWBY said. Got it. That's the only part of my advice you remember? Coco asked. Don't be sorry and don't fail. You got it. If there's ever anything you need, feel free to ask, Coco said. Thank you, RWBY said. I only have one question so far. Shoot, Coco said. Can you really see with those shades on? RWBY waved a hand in front of Coco's face. We're indoors. Isn't it too dark? Coco laughed. Kind of a cutesy scene. I think this book is canon. Let's see. As Yatsuhashi and Fox rounded the corner in the hallway, someone crashed into Yatsuhashi at full speed and went sprawling backwards. Are you alright? Yatsuhashi leaned over and offered the girl a hand up. She shoved it aside and scrambled to her feet. What happened? Is that blood? He pointed to the red stain on the side of her white dress. I can't stand the sight of blood. No, it was RWBY, she said. Yatsuhashi's brow furrowed in confusion when his eyes lit up. Team RWBY? Apparently, she said. Right, we saw you guys in action. Initiation could be wild, but you were great. Thanks, but I'm still waiting for an apology, Weiss said. Wow, Fox sent to Yatsuhashi. Wait, from me? But I didn't do anything wrong. You're saying it was my fault I bumped into you? Weiss asked. We were just walking. You were the one running without paying attention where you were going. But you take up so much space, Weiss said. Fox shook his head. And you act like you own the place. Yatsuhashi started to get angry. He closed his eyes and went to his happy place and took a deep breath. He opened his eyes. You're not going to describe the happy place? Like, there's some lazy that's some little bit of lazing right there, I think. You don't just say he went to his happy place. You say he imagined a babbling brook or something like that. You have to kind of give us a picture. It helps fill in the details of what is his happy place. What makes him happy? What makes him pleasant? It helps inform us on the character if you actually describe it in a little more detail in your prose. It's not really a big deal. Let's start again. It's not really a big deal. Let's start again. I'm Yatsuhashi Daichi, and this is Fox Alistar. Fox held up his hand in a half-hearted wave. So, Weiss said. Someone needs to learn a few manners, Fox sent Yatsuhashi. Yatsuhashi laughed. This looks like a job for Team Coffee, he sent back. The laughing only made Weiss angrier. Am I missing something? She hated being left out. What's so funny? She scowled at Fox. And why are you looking at Red? Nothing, he said mildly. Excuse me? Weiss waved a hand. Weiss's hand went to the hilt of her weapon, a wicked-looking rapier. Weiss held up her hand. Hold on, he means nothing, literally. Fox is blind. Oh, Weiss studied Fox's face. I see. Go on, rub it in, Fox smirked. Her face turned pink. Yatsuhashi noticed a scar over her left eye. She wasn't so perfect as she liked to think, he figured, and maybe that was why she had such a huge chip on her shoulder. Well, it was nice running into you, but... it was nice running into you, but I have to get out of this dress. Her face reddened. She slipped between Yatsuhashi and Fox and hurried down the hall. Then she stopped and turned. Sorry, what team did you say you were with again? She asked. Team Coffee, Yatsuhashi said. Team Coffee? They were kind of a big deal at Beacon. Weiss should have recognized the big guy with the skinny red guy in red, but she had been so annoyed with RWBY. Weiss had been planning to join the rest of the first-year students at Beacon and have Pure and Nikos as her partner. Weiss would have been leader of the group, of course, and she was going to become the besties with Coco Adele and get pointers on being the best huntress she could be, then blow all of Team Coffee's records out of the water. Instead, none of that happened. None of it would happen unless she could convince Professor Osmond to change his mind and put Weiss in charge of Team RWBY. She wondered what they would name their group. Team RWBY? Team Warby? That didn't have the same ring to it. Do not feed knives for cash. Never feed knives for cash. That is a rookie mistake, writers. A rookie mistake. If you don't know who Knives for Cash is, look him up and then proceed to ignore him completely. He was funny the first 3 or 4 fanfics, and then after that he kind of was a one-note pony. If anyone else has read his work, how many... just take a shot every single time he says, crossing the Rubicon. Seriously, you'll be drunk before you're dead. That makes sense. Sorry, you'll be dead before you're drunk. That makes less sense, but I'm running with it. There. Velvet tried to ignore the boys following her as she hurried away from the party in the amphitheater. Hey, where you going? One boy asked. Not much of a party animal. They both laughed. Velvet walked faster. It's Knives for Cash with a 4. Oh, hey, the stream health came back. Yay! Frickin' YouTube. Walking fast, walking faster. I don't know, she looks like she knows how to have fun, his friend said. Yeah, you know what they said about bunny girls. Velvet hurried up so she didn't have to hear that one again. Uh-oh, I think we're making her hopping mad, his friend said. Blake Belladonna looked up from her book she was reading as Velvet passed her table. She had been deeply engrossed in The Boy Who Fell from the Sky, but she couldn't tune out the abusive behavior from the boys following the Faunus girl. As a Faunus herself, albeit one in hiding with a bow covering her cat ears, and as a Beacon student and a huntress in training, she was disgusted by the ugliness of her fellow classmates were showing. Hey, at least we're seeing it, for Christ's sake. No, so we know it's actually a thing in this universe, as opposed to just guessing about it. When the boys approached, she put out a foot and casually tripped one of them. He went down hard face first. Blake calmly resumed reading as his friend balled up his fist and turned on her. What was that for? He yelled. Up ahead, Velvet stopped and turned around instantly, taking in what had happened. She hesitated, wondering if she should go help the black-haired girl or take this opportunity to slip away. There wasn't really a choice. Velvet went back. Blake sighed and put down her book again. She stood up. I don't like your blatant racism, she said. What's it to you? The boy asked. You have something to say to me? I'm trying to do this voicing. Someone had a note about Australian voices. So they're kind of British with... they start low and go end high. So it's like, you have something to say to me? You have something to say to me? You have something to say to me? The boy clamped his mouth shut. No more big words, huh? Blake asked. Typical cowards. Who do you think you are? He said. Blake Belladonna, she replied, then smiled. Team RWBY. I mean, if you guys want to drink alcohol, you can. The boy's face paled. The ones from... He turned and looked at the big screen on the wall, which was playing highlights from the initiation earlier that day. His mouth fell open as he watched Blake swing on her ribbon through the Emerald Forest ruins and land on a giant Nevermore, bury her blade ferociously in its back, her eyes gleaming. Sorry to bother you. The boy started backing away. Not so fast. Blake's ribbon wrapped around the boy, holding him in place. Damn, Blake, quick on the draw there. Hey, he squirmed. I don't want to fight you. Good. That wouldn't be much of a fight, Blake said. What should we do with him? She looked at Velvet. Velvet looked surprised. She stared at the boy. Let him go? Thank you, the boy said. Blake pulled him towards her with her ribbon, then kicked him in the back, sending him spinning away into his friend, and releasing him from her ribbon. Blake calmly sat down and opened her book. Velvet watched her quietly for a moment. She approached, one hand on her elbow. Thanks. Sure, Blake kept reading. Okay. Velvet started walking away. Why'd you let him off just so easily? Blake asked. Velvet looked back. What? You let someone like that go with a slap on the wrist, not even that much. They'll just keep repeating the same behavior. I don't believe in fighting prejudice with violence. Blake wrinkled her nose. You don't like fighting? I'm here, aren't I? I like fighting Grim, fine, but not other people. Even when those around you don't treat you like a person. Velvet shook her head. Probably not wouldn't have changed his mind. I'm sounding more freaking Liverpudlian. It would only have made him angrier. Maybe next time he wouldn't try to hurt me with more than words. Or worse, he might have to go pick on someone else. Maybe if I treat him with respect, he'll learn to treat me with respect. Blake shook her head. That's not how we deal with people like him where I come from. Where's that? Where's that? Blake closed her book and smiled. Hi, I'm Blake, and you're Velvet Scarlatina. That's right. Velvet didn't hide her surprise as she sat down across from the girl. Have we met? Just now, Blake said. Let me ask a question another way. Why is a member of the legendary Team Coffee running away from two losers who were barely able to pass initiation? Velvet's eyes darted to the floor. I didn't want to attract attention. They don't belong here. You do, Blake said. People like that need to be shut down, or they go on harassing other people. We should at least report them to Professor Ospin. He has more important things to worry about, Velvet said. Professor Goodwitch, then. She'd teach them a lesson. It isn't really worth my time. That's the best way to fight back, by not letting them get to me. Amen, Velvet. It's your call, but I think you should stick up for yourself. Those guys aren't even a fraction as scary as Grim. I know you can handle yourself in the field. Blake pushed her book over to Velvet. Here, I think you'll enjoy reading this. Velvet flipped through the book. Really? Just don't fold the pages over. I hate dog ears, Blake said. Cute. Just don't, suddenly someone deposited 3 glasses on the table between Blake and Velvet. Hey, did I miss anything? Yang asked. Hi, I'm Yang Xiaolong. Velvet Scarlatina, Velvet said, looking up at an extremely badass blonde. She had seen her fight Grim with amazing gauntlets that really packed a punch. Honestly, Yang's weapon has been the least creative of all of them. I guess no, Blake's could be too. Velvet couldn't wait to try them out for herself. She had to leave tonight with pictures of these 2 girls with their weapons. 3 drinks? Always carry an extra, Yang said. But since you're sitting with us, you can have it. I'm telling you, Blake, you're gonna love this strawberry sunrise. Blake sniffed it. Non-alcoholic, right? Do I look like someone who breaks the rules? Yang sat down. Don't answer that. She sipped her drink. Speaking of breaking bones... Rules? Velvet asked. Rules, bones, sometimes they're the same thing. Yang shrugged. Coco was going to like her, Velvet thought. Anyway, those 2 idiots pushed past me on my way over here. Maybe dropped my drinks. That's why I'm late. They had to get you new ones? Velvet asked. No, I had to beat them up, Yang laughed and held up her glass. Banzai! I love it here. Blake and Velvet clinked glasses with Yang. Here's to a great year, Blake said. Velvet sipped her drink. Surprisingly, it tasted exactly like strawberries and sunshine. She raised her glass in another toast. To new friendships. And that's chapter 5. That's a weird setting for this. It seems kind of bizarre to have an initiation party, but we never saw something like it. But I could imagine that happening. Yang seems a little too friendly with Blake, at least. They seem too familiar, but it's okay because Yang has the more outgoing personality, so that makes sense. There wasn't anything offensive in that last scene. I liked it all right. All right, chapter 6. This is a Velvet chapter. So let's get with the velveting. Love Me by Bunny Girl. She's so cute. Although it is, of course, illegal to say that bunnies are cute, or at least it is inappropriate. Only bunnies can use the C word, but... Chapter 6. Back inside the Caspian's shed, Velvet sat next to Gus, hoping it would help him relax. He seemed to trust her. He was clearly nervous with all the huntsmen plus Slate waiting for him to explain himself. How can it be all your fault, Gus? Coco said. Give him some space, Coco, Velvet snapped. Coco crossed her arms. We don't have time to coddle anyone, Velvet. What do you mean by that? Velvet said. Guys, Fox sent. Can not fighting? Velvet and Yatsu glanced at each other. Yatsu tapped Fox on the shoulder. Didn't get all that. You okay? He whispered. Fox's shoulders slumped. It looked like his semblance was still malfunctioning. Well, get on with it, boy, Bertolek barked. Gus flinched. Velvet hated bullies. She put a hand on Gus's shoulder. You can do this, she said. He took her hand and squeezed it. Velvet felt a blip. Wait, what? Did I skip a page? Yeah, what the hell? Velvet felt a blip of happiness, a feeling that she had almost forgotten ever since they lost Beacon and come to Vacuo. Gus took a deep, shaking breath. Then he sat up straight. It's my semblance. I'm able to... He glanced at Edward. I'm able to block other people's semblances. The group was silent for a moment. Then Fox whooped. That's what's wrong with me! You've been blocking my semblance! Gus's eyes went wide. I'm sorry, I can't control it very well. It's kind of all or nothing. That's a really useful semblance. You're kind of blowing it on one-off character, I'm thinking. Gus's eyes went wide. That kind of semblance would be a big advantage in a fight, Coco said. If you know how to use it. Have you thought about training to be a huntsman? Coco asked. No way, Gus said. Now's not really the time to be discussing the kid's life goals. Hold on, Slate said. I still don't get how blocking someone's semblance is linked to unleashing emotions. Gus nodded and swallowed. I've been using my semblance to keep my grandfather's semblance in check. His ability is to manipulate other people's emotions. What? Bertolek jumped up. You're the reason the Grimm keep attacking us. Bertolek, Carmine said in a warning tone. You should have said something, he went on. It's important to share this kind of information with the people you hired to keep you alive. Sit down, Bertolak. You aren't the boss of me, he said. No, but I'm in charge here, Slate said. You can leave anytime. You'd be in charge of corpses and empty homes if it weren't for us. Sand and ash, you get me? Carmine grabbed Burlake's arm. Sit down. Sweat trickled down Velvet's forehead and stung at the corners of her left eye. She squinted. It felt like it had gotten 5 degrees warmer in here in the last minute. Dawn must be breaking outside. He yanked his arm away from his partner and sat. You aren't the boss of me either, Carmine, Bertolak said in a warning voice. Just say, Bertolak warned. Seriously, this is the most annoying thing thus far with his writing style. He always goes for the said, the said, the said. Said in a warning voice. Bertolak warned. Warned. It's easy. It's one word. It condenses 5 words into 4. 5 words into 1. Like it's very easy. But you did sit down, she smirked. Now, Slate makes a good point. Maybe we should leave. Now that we know Edward is drawing the Grim, we should take him away from here as soon as possible. Velvet looked at Edward to see that what he thought of all of this, but he didn't seem to even be aware they were talking with him. She leaned forward and talked to Gus. So your father is no longer able to control his ability? She asked. He can't even manage to stop himself from wandering the desert in his pajamas. Bertolak gestured at Edward. See what we're dealing with here? Bertolak, Carmine said. As he's gotten older, he's been losing control of it, Gus said. Now he's just magnifies whatever emotions people already have. Not all the time, but when he's agitated or distracted, when he's sleeping sometimes. It's unpredictable, and it's getting worse. Harder for me to block. I'm not strong enough. Carmine stared at Edward. It's been you all along. No wonder you wanted to avoid people. Fox leaned forward with a puzzled expression on his face. Do they seem suspicious to you? He said. Then he smiled because his semblance was working again. Slate looked at Fox curiously, but then turned her attention back to Bertolak, Carmine, and the Caspians. The other huntsmen had always seemed suspicious, but now that Fox mentioned it, their reactions to Gus's confession didn't seem genuine. Trying to see what else is on me messaged. Their behavior does seem odd, Velvet said. Like they're acting. You should have mentioned this when you hired us, Edward, Bertolak growled. You've put countless lives in jeopardy. Bertolak is overdoing it a little. If I had to bet, I'd say he already knew Edward was causing the mood bombs. Probably even before he hired them. But if that's the case, why did they keep that info to themselves, Coco said. Maybe they're just trying to avoid getting in trouble, Yatsuhashi said. Because we'd be angry at them too if we knew they knew all along. Because we'd be angry at them too if we knew they knew all along. Why is there a question mark at the end of that? Let's settle down, Slate said. I told you, it isn't Grandpa's fault, Gus said. It's mine. It's no more your fault for not being strong enough to block him than it is Edward's fault for losing control, Coco said. Definitely, Velvet said. Running someplace you could avoid other people is very noble of you, Edward, Carmine said. But why Vacuo? Fox asked. Velvet realized she and Yatsu hadn't briefed Coco and Fox yet, and it seemed they hadn't discussed this with Bertolak and Carmine either. We're heading to the western shore, Gus said. It's remote on the edge of the CCT range when the system was working. Guess it's moot now, but for a couple of people who didn't want to be bothered, bliss, Carmine said. But it isn't much safer there than it is in the desert, Fox said. There's a reason more people haven't settled there. And that's a long, dangerous journey through Vacuo, Slate shook her head. Damn tourist! Well, you know what? It's none of your business where we're taking them, Bertolak sneered. You see, right there, Bertolak sneered. Like, you're doing it just fine. Guys, Yatsu said, we have to calm down. Velvet had rarely seen Yatsu like this. Sweat beaded on his face and he looked pale and wobbly. He must be struggling to keep his emotions in check. Poor Yatsu, she thought. Velvet looked at Gus. Can you try harder to block Edward's semblance now? This has to be another mood bomb. We aren't acting like ourselves. It's hard. Sometimes when I'm upset... Gus bent over and placed his face in his hands. Velvet patted his back. We need to get out there and check on everyone else. We'll sort out what to do later, Slate said. We need to leave the settlement now, Carmine said. Carmine, Bertilac, and Slate started arguing. Isolating Edward isn't the answer. We may as well kill him ourselves and be done with it, Fox sent. Fox? Coco sent. I'm just making a point. The Caspians will die on their own. I think they'd be better off in civilization, but not a small defenseless settlement like this one. I'd hardly call Feldspar defenseless, Coco said. You know what I mean. We should take them to a big city with lots of huntsmen. You mean the capital? Velvet asked. From here, it's about as far north to Vacuo as it is to the west to the shore. But what effect would a mood bomb have on a population that size? I don't know, Fox, Yatashi said. What do you want, Gus? Velvet asked softly. It's time to speak up for yourself. It doesn't matter, Gus said. It does. It has to. Velvet knelt in front of him. If you want to survive in the West or anywhere in Remnant these days, you have to stick up for yourself. Slate held up a hand to silence Bertilac and Carmine, who seemed to be arguing as much as with each other as with the rest of them. So what is it? Velvet asked. Where do you want to go, Gus? With an ability like yours, you could be a huntsman one day, Fox said. All you need is some training. We could take you into a combat school in the city. I bet Headmaster Theodore would recommend you. The boy doesn't want a life like that, Carmine said. Look where it left his grandfather. She flung a hat in Edward's direction. He looked oblivious to everything that was happening around him. That had nothing to do with being a huntsman, Yatsu said. Memory is fragile, easy to lose, especially in old age. Gus drew his shoulders in even more, practically curling into a fetal position. Being a huntsman can be just as dangerous as living alone in the wilderness, especially if you don't have the instincts, Coco said. Now you're seeing some sense, Bertilac said. Bertilac added. Coco's glasses flashed as she turned to stare at the larger huntsman down. But Gus does need training, and Edward needs help. They won't get either of those living in the middle of nowhere. We'll try for the city of Vacuo first. If no one can help your grandfather, I bet hospitals in Atlas could, Velvet said. And if you wanted to, they also have schools that can teach you to control your semblance and better manage Edwards. Would you like that? That's some good world building! I hadn't even considered that when I was writing more about fixing RWBY, but that's a good point! How do people with regular semblances learn to control them? What if you have something destructive like this? It'd be great to actually have that. That's a good piece of world building, so kudos on Myers, Miles, and Carey. Whoever was responsible for that, kudos on you. It's a good piece of world building. Would you like that? She said to Gus. We're responsible for the Caspians, Bertilac said, and we're taking them where Edward asked us to take them, to the western shore. You 4 trainees stay here and defend Feldspar if you want, but we are out. That's a death sentence, Coco said. You can't drop them off and leave them undefended. We're being paid to get them there. Once we do, the job is done, Bertilac laughed. This is just about money? Coco shook her purse and the Gatling gun appeared. What are you doing, Coco? Velvet thought. I've been waiting to tell you. I think you're a terrible huntsman, Coco said. A disgrace to our profession. You don't have what it takes to be a huntress, Bertilac said. Nope, we're not doing this. Let's go, kid. Carmine stood and grabbed Gus's arm. He held tightly on the Velvet's hand. Hey, Velvet said. She felt fury build in her. It may have been magnified by Edward's unchecked ability, but it was all hers, and she was ready to own it. Back off, lady! Gus hasn't said what he wants yet! Gus muttered something under his breath. Velvet heard him. Fox heard him too, because he responded telepathically. There we go, then. But everyone needed to hear it in Gus's own voice. Louder, Velvet said. Gus repeated himself, only marginally louder. The whole room fell quiet. "One more time, Gus," Velvet said. "Speak loud and clear. This is your choice." Gus looked up, a fierce expression on his tear-streaked face. "I don't want to split up." Gus looked up, a fierce expression. Edward is paying for our services, and until he tells us otherwise, we're following his orders. Bertolak grabbed Edward's arm. "Get your hands off him," Coco said. "Let me make this perfectly clear." Bertolak drew his mace and extended its chain. Spikes popped out of the steel ball at the end of it. The handle also seemed to have a pistol grip. The black metal was scratched and cracked, and there were specks of rust. Velvet hoped they were rust. The black metal was scratched and cracked, and there were specks of rust. Velvet hoped they were rust on the spikes. "The old man will not be going with you no matter what it takes." "Bertolak," Carmine said. The air was practically boiling in the room, and it was getting hard to breathe. It was hard to see, with the haze shimmering, making everything all wavy, like none of them were real. This was all a mirage, but it was getting very real. Yatsu drew his sword. Fox brought his arm blades into a fighting stance. Coco idly swung her handbag. "Guys," Velvet said, "put your weapons away." Even as she said it, she pulled her camera box around to her front, thinking about what weapon would end this most quickly without anyone having to get hurt. She had to defuse the situation. God, these pages keep sticking together. It's awful. Give the mood bomb time to wear off. Let everyone cool down and come back to their senses. There was a tense standoff, no one willing to make the first move. And then they heard a shout outside. A scream. More screams. Running. Gunfire. "Too late," Slate said. She leaned on a table with her arms locked, looking utterly exhausted and resigned. "The Grimm are here." Chapter 7. Which is a nice longer one, but then Chapter 8 is relatively short. You know, I burned my tongue earlier today on my dinner, and I think it's actually helping because it already feels dry, but it's not drying out as quickly. Fascinating what kind of effect it can have on me. Now, let's read that super chat that I got from Ash Burian. "If we get a character short for RTX this year, who do you think it will be about? I'm not a fan of them since they take away the budget from the volume." I'm a fan of character shorts if they don't take away from the budget for the volume. I love the original 4. I think they are some of the best parts of RWBY overall because it's like pure passion funneled into them. Who would it be for the character short? Possibly Maria. There's always Crow. That would be a ballsy one to go with. Winter might get a character short. Weiss could always get another character short. She got a pointless character short in volume 4? Or 5. She got a pointless one for 5, I believe. So I don't know who I would want for the volume shorts. Let's see. So chapter 7 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 pages, then 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. 23 pages until chapter 9. I can swing that at the very least. I think I can make it to chapter 9. I don't know if I can stand after that, but we'll see. We'll see how long chapter 9 is. It's what? 164? Yeah, I might not be able to make it to chapter 10. But we'll see. That's 176, and we're currently on 140. That's 36 pages, 37 pages. Yeah, the RT Fired Vic, they've already announced Lichtner, I believe is the name of the new guy they have for Crow. Blade Charge, getting in that in before I start the chapter. Do you think the 2 huntsmen will survive this book? I'm thinking Bertolak might actually be one of the huntsmen on the train in volume 6. anyone that doesn't mind spoiling themselves, look up Bertilac and see if you can confirm that for me. Because I thought that one of the people on the train had a mace that sounded a lot like Bertilac's weapon. So I'm thinking he might actually have been in Mistral. I don't know why or how that timeline lines up, but it's possible. Neo, Cinder, Crow, Emerald, Mercury. A Neo short would be perfect. Because it doesn't ruin a surprise because Neo's already back in the show. And it would allow us to find out what happened to her after everything went down. Lord knows it would help me with Volume 4. Though I already have some fun plans with Neo, so I might overwrite that. Volume 4 is going to be a bit of a departure. I'm going to start making big changes in Volume 4. But yes, let's start with Chapter 7, shall we? Chapter 7 is a Yatsuhashi chapter. Yatsuhashi chapter. I cannot pronounce his name. Liwarthadam. And you're right, that guy in that episode might have actually been named already. But we'll see. Chapter 7. At 8 years old, Yatsuhashi unlocked his semblance when he accidentally made his dad forget that he had already given him his allowance and got another 3 lien. It had taken him a while to figure out how his semblance worked, and whenever he told his parents and grandfather what it was, they immediately forgot about it. For years, it was that way for him. It was a way for him to get out of trouble when he did something wrong, or to get an extra serving of dessert. At first, Yatsuhashi had excused his mischief as experimenting, and it seemed mostly harmless. Over time, he learned that it was easiest to get someone to forget something they didn't care much about. A fleeting thought or stray remark made without much intent. But if an idea was more firmly fixed in a person's long-term memory, he could only make them lose it for a short period of time. Then one day it had gone from funny to scary. Yatsuhashi's mother had recently given birth to his little sister, Hiyoko, and he was jealous of all the attention the baby was getting. One morning, his sleep-deprived, stressed-out mother had told him to go clean his room, one of his least favorite chores. So he decided to make her forget about it so he could go play instead. All it took was a little mental nudge to get her to think about something else like a baby. That shouldn't be too hard. His mother lifted her coffee to her lips, and then paused, blinking. Then she put the cup down without taking a sip. She glanced at Yatsuhashi with a glazed expression. "Good morning, Yatsu. What was I saying?" Yatsuhashi grinned. "Good morning. You told me to run along and play." She frowned. "I thought there was something else." Then the fog passed. "Run along and play, then," she smiled. Yatsuhashi pulled on his sleeve and was about to go outside when Hiyoko started crying. He slid open the door, but he waited when his mother came out to the living room, looking confused. "That sounds just like a baby." Yatsuhashi froze. "It's Hiyoko," he said. "Hiyoko? Do the neighbors have a new baby? I must have forgotten." "It's Hiyoko," Yatsuhashi repeated. That's such a pretty name." Yatsuhashi was sweating now. "Your baby, Hiyoko, my sister." His mother laughed. "That's a good one." All the while, Hiyoko kept crying. "I do wish she'd stop crying," his mother said. "Where are her parents?" Yatsuhashi hurried into the nursery and picked up the red-faced girl. He cradled her against his chest, supporting her fragile neck the way his parents had shown him. He'd only held her once, but he simply hadn't been interested in more contact than that. It was bad enough that everyone else had been catering to her needs every moment of every day. He was surprisingly touched at how she snuggled into his shoulder, and how she had calmed down when he picked her up. She only did that for his mother and grandfather, and really made his dad work to soothe her, jiggling her up and down, rocking her, singing until he or the baby, or both of them, was worn out. She was so light and warm, and she smelled nice. Yatsuhashi went into the living room where his mother was reading a book, something she hadn't been able to do since she had come home from the hospital. Yatsuhashi had been annoyed that she didn't have time or energy to play with him anymore, but he had missed the fact that she didn't have any time for herself either, including the moment to drink her morning coffee while paging through a book. "Who is this?" his mother asked. "Hiyoko," Yatsuhashi said, looking for even the slightest glimmer of recognition. Nothing. Yatsu knew almost nothing about caring for a baby, but his grandfather and father were out fishing, so it all came down to Yatsuhashi. "When did you start babysitting?" his mother asked. "That's so sweet of you." Dude, this is fucked up. I'm kind of loving this. Just now, But I should have started a long time ago, Yatsuhashi said. Little Hyoko wasn't content resting in Yatsuhashi's arms for long. When she started snuffling again, he checked her diaper, thankfully clean, and then got her a bottle of milk. He asked his mother to show him how to feed her. I haven't done this since you were a baby, she told Yatsu, but it feels like only yesterday. He took over for her while she went to go get a shower. Then he played with Hyoko for a little while, which mostly involved tickling her and making funny faces. When his mother came back, she still didn't remember her daughter. Yatsuhashi was starting to get worried. But either she would remember or his dad would come home and he would try to explain what happened. Maybe this time they would remember what he told them about his semblance. Yatsuhashi ended up spending the whole day with Hyoko. When she wouldn't go to sleep, he cradled her on his chest and she dropped right off, and so did he. His mother woke him as she took the sleeping baby from his arms. It was dark outside. Thank goodness you were here, Yatsu, she whispered. I don't know what happened. It was like I forgot about Hyoko. She was distraught. It was my fault, Yatsuhashi said. She gave him a puzzled look. When she had placed Hyoko back in her crib, she found Yatsu in the kitchen. He had been so busy with his sister he hadn't eaten all day. He grabbed a slice of cake and his mother didn't question it. He told her about his semblance, what he had done. She was quiet when he finished, and there was a frightened look in her eye that haunted him to this day. Why didn't you tell us about this earlier, she said. I have. You never remembered it when I stopped talking, so I stopped trying. She shook her head. This explains a lot. We all noticed we were getting more forgetful, but we didn't know why. This is an incredible discovery, Yatsu. You have an amazing ability. She took a deep breath and looked at him warily. But you know you have to stop using it on us. Yatsuhashi realized he was crying. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean to make you forget about Hyoko. She pulled him close and her arms around him made him feel better. She stopped crying. He rested his head on her shoulder. Shh, I know, sweetie. But you did the right thing to keep her safe. Thank you. When his father and grandfather came home, Yatsu went through the same story again with his mother's help. This time the news stuck in their memories. His father cradled Hyoko with a dark expression, half anger, half fear. Even if you thought you weren't causing any harm, you shouldn't have done that to us, Yatsuhashi. What were you thinking? Yatsu lowered his eyes and remained silent. You have to respect the minds of others, his mother said. When you affect people like that, you take away more than their memories. You take away their right to make their own choices. Yatsu's grandfather nodded. All we are is what we remember. If you erase the wrong memory, you erase our identity. You are not to use his ability again. Do you understand me? His father said. His grandfather held up a hand. Not until you have learned to control it. With proper training, you can find a way to use your semblance for good. Yatsu's dad turned away, bouncing Hyoko in his arms. It's dangerous, he muttered. This is still our Yatsu. He's a good boy, and now that he's told us his semblance, we can help him learn to use it appropriately, his mother said. Just before bed, Yatsu checked in with Hyoko. He watched her sleeping peacefully on her back, arms and legs sprawled everywhere, mouth open. She wasn't really that bad. He might even be starting to love her. On his way to his room, he heard his parents talking quietly to each other. His grandfather caught him sitting on the floor in the hallway, arms crossed over his knees. I'm a monster, Yatsu whispered. Only if you choose to be. The person you become will be defined all by the choices you make along the way, good and bad. His grandfather put a hand on his head. It'll be all right, Yatsu. You don't have to deal with this on your own anymore. We're here for you. How long is this chapter still? I want to refill my water. Oops. Monsters. Everywhere. Yatsu actually felt a knot in his stomach at the sight of the Feldspar townspeople fleeing from the Grim. He had only seen some of these Grim species as drawings on Professor Port's walls, but there was no mistaking it. The black, red, and white markings on the demons, or their base hatred for people as they stalked among the tents and homes. For a moment, Bertolac and Carmine were no longer interested in fighting Team Coffee. Now there was a clear common danger. We'll take Edward and Gus out of here to the north while your team evacuates Feldspar, Carmine said to Coco. North? Fox asked. The Grimm aren't attacking on that side because of the wall, Carmine said. Coco hefted her Gatling gun. You heard Gus. He doesn't want to split up, and now isn't the time to settle this. Grimm are already here, and emotions are going to run high whether Edward is here or not. Yatsuhashi drew fulcrum and bounced lightly on the balls of his feet. There was no time for talk. They needed to get out of there and fight, and defend and evacuate. I hate that. They need to get out of there to fight and defend and evacuate. I hate that structure. It's so annoying. Together we can fight our way through to the western border of the settlement, Velvet said. If we hurry before the Grimm head us off. We'll stick with your original plan, Coco said. Head west fast and try to get out to the desert. Get out of the desert. Once we're out, we can move faster on firm ground and stay ahead of the Grimm. If Gus wants to try combat school, it'll be safer to loop around and encounter the desert farther north. We can even deliver the Caspians to the city for you, since we'll be heading back to Shade ourselves. You'll like the city of Vacuo, Fox told Gus. It's rougher than Vale, but there are a few more welcoming places. There are a few more welcoming places in Remnant. Give me again with this page nonsense. See, it's rougher than Vale, but there are a few more welcoming places in Remnant, or livelier. Anyone who makes it through the desert to the city has already proven they belong there. Yatsuhashi wished Shade Academy were more like the city Fox described. It felt like every day at the school was a test to see how good you were, to prove that you deserved to be training to be a huntsman. Survival was more important than teamwork, and it was more competitive than Beacon Academy. Even within your own team, placing Coffee at a unique disadvantage. Although they had quickly risen... this is not how I characterized Shade in my story. That's going to be an interesting piece of dissonance. Although they had quickly risen in the ranks and earned the respect of their peers, that admiration had only lasted until their next mission. If their combat school in Vacuo were anything like that, he honestly wondered if Gus would thank them for getting him there. I agree with Coco. If you won't come with us, then we'll come with you. Make sure you get to the Caspians where they want to go, Slate said. It's the only way the tribe can make it with this many Grimm attracted to the area. Carmine nodded, considered, and then nodded. Seems sensible. Fine, Bertolac said. You win. Hold on, Yatsuhashi said. Gus, you understand what we're saying. We're going to take you someplace safe for now, where we can talk more about what you and your grandfather want to do. You don't have to deal with this on your own anymore. Velvet smiled at her partner. Gus looked surprised. His eyes were suddenly wet. Yatsuhashi knew what it meant for a kid to hear something like that, and realized that they didn't have to carry on a heavy burden alone. Gus wiped his tears away with his arm. I trust you, Gus said. Let's stick together. Yatsuhashi might have been imagining it, but with that finally settled, he felt lighter, more positive, which didn't match up with the grim horde advancing through town. Or maybe he was just looking forward to dealing with the problem he could more easily solve, but the moment was short-lived. Great, you don't want anyone else to get hurt, and this is how you save as many of them as possible, Coco said. You know, Theodore won't thank you for bringing more Grimm to his city, Slate said. Or an old man who attracts them. Who's saying this? I think the headmaster will be fascinated by Edward and understand why we brought him. And there are more than enough huntsmen in the city and at the academy to defend Vacuo. Isn't that what you thought about Beacon? Bertolac said. The anger flared up in Yatsuhashi faster than he could swallow it. He threw a punch at Bertolac, but the huntsman saw the blow coming and leaned away so his fist only scored a glancing hit. Yeah, I've been waiting for this, Bertolac gestured Yatsuhashi forward. Yatsuhashi lunged for him, but Velvet grabbed his arm. Yatsu, no! She said. He has it coming, Yatsuhashi growled. Yatsuhashi, stand down. Right now we need to fight the Grimm, not each other, Coco said. When everyone's safe, you can sort this out with Bertolac, but you'll have to take a number. I'm ready anytime, Bertolac said. She's right, Carmine said. Let's focus on surviving this attack instead of killing each other, or we'll all be dead. Carmine, Bertolac, you protect Gus and Edward. You've been through this before, so work with Slate and Velvet to organize an evacuation, Coco said. Oh, come on, Velvet said. Not now, Velvet. Coco looked at Yatsuhashi and Fox. We'll hold off the Grimm. We don't take orders from kids, Bertolac growled. It wasn't an order, it was a suggestion. Coco lifted her gun and turned away from him. A strong suggestion. Bertolac, Slate said. We need you. Carmine drew her scythe from her belt. She clicked their hilts together and she pulled them apart to extend them into a long bow with bladed ends. It's a weird combination. I guess that works. Locked and loaded. Coco tapped Fox on the shoulder. Can you push a message to everyone at once like before? Tell them the plan? Try and get them all to calm down. Fox hesitated and nodded. He lowered his head, and a moment later, Yatsuhashi heard a voice from his mind while Fox spoke aloud, slightly out of sync. Attention. Please try to calm down. Your emotions will only draw more Grimm to you. Make your way to the west end of Feldspar as quickly as possible. Slate is organizing an evacuation. Bertolac and Carmine will keep you safe, and will keep the Grimm busy to cover your escape. Fox pitched forward, and Yatsuhashi caught him. Using a semblance to that extent took a lot out of him. Okay, Yatsuhashi asked. I can fight. Not what I asked, but it's good enough for me. You have what you need, Velvet? Coco nodded to the camera in Velvet's hands. Velvet gave her a thumbs up. She locked eyes with Yatsuhashi for a moment. Yatsuhashi nodded. He turned and ran towards the screams. Fox and Coco were just behind him. Up ahead, Yatsuhashi saw a Ravager beating its wings over the heads of a red-haired woman and her child. He recognized them as Amaranth and Ash. These people weren't just strangers. He had spoken with many of them, heard firsthand about how all they'd been through. He didn't know how people could live this way. Maybe people in the other kingdoms had gotten spoiled with their home's relative stability, since this was just how things were in Vacuo. He and his team had been upset about losing Beacon for the last year, but the desert nomads were never even had homes for long. Their whole existence was centered on picking up and moving on, and it was the other kingdoms that had created the situation for them. No wonder they didn't want to get involved in Remnant's politics. How exactly did Vacuo? I guess because the war, I think the war happened mostly in Vacuo. Or was it? No, it happened mostly in Vale, so the war didn't really affect Vacuo, so how was it everyone else's fault? I'll have to look into that. Okay. Yatsuhashi ran towards the huddled mother and son, yelling to draw the Grimm's attention. It flapped up and turned to face Yatsuhashi, shrieking back at him in an ear-piercing pitch. Yatsuhashi winced and gripped at his sword tighter. The creature flew up, 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 and then it dove, moving far more quickly than he expected. It opened its mouth, still blasting with sonic waves and baring 4 wicked sharp teeth, each the size of the shape of Fox's arm blades. The size and shape of Fox's arm blades. Yatsuhashi clenched his jaws and readied himself. Just before the Ravager reached him, he vaulted up and over, twisting in midair and slashing down with his sword, slicing the bat diagonally in half. The 2 pieces fluttered down on lifeless wings before the Grimm evaporated into black smoke. Yatsuhashi landed on his feet, planting his sword tip in the ground to get his balance. Ash gaped at him, with eyes and mouths wide. Head west, look for Velvet, Yatsuhashi said. She and the others will get you out of here. Thank you. Fuck, what voice did I give Amaranth? Thank you. Amaranth picked up Ash and ran towards safety. Yatsuhashi saw Fox battling a Dromedon, delivering a swift kick to the monstrous pitch-black camel's head. Ooh, a camel fawn. Camel Grimm. That's a cool idea. To prevent it from spitting venom at him. It spits venom? That's rad. He delivered a punch to the Grimm's misshapen hump, which extended like a balloon before it burst with a soft boom. Coco was protecting a group of children from a jackalope, a huge four-legged beast with black fur, branching red and white antlers extended from its bone mask. The powerful hind legs that could propel it at great heights and allow it to run fast. She couldn't get a clean shot with her gun, as she was fighting it with her bags and fists at close range. Finally, having enough of that, she grabbed the Grim by its horns and flipped it over. It landed on its leg and kicked, flying towards Coco and ramming her with its antlers, knocking her down. It scrambled onto its feet and snapped at her with slavering teeth. The insides of its mouth glowed as red as its eyes. Coco held her ground. She shook her gun. She shook out her gun in one smooth motion, planted her feet, and reduced the Grim to smoky black shreds with her aura-charged bullets. They keep flipping between aura-charged and semblance-charged, and I don't think they understand the difference. Although I'm not really sure if we understand the difference either. The group kept advancing deeper into Feldspar. As they went, they checked every shack, tent, and stall for survivors, checking every body they found. Yatsuhashi knew many of their names, too, and recalled their conversations they had shared only days before. Each fallen person spurred them to reach the next tent while he could still help them. Yatsuhashi had seen the long-necked Ziraph advancing quickly through the town towards them. Its three heads bobbed above the short roofs, while it kicked anyone and anything that crossed its paths. Okay, stop, Myers. You're introducing like 4 or 5 new Grim all at once. I can't keep up with this. How many Grim do we have coming into this? Got Ziraph, Dromedon, Jackalope, and Ravagers, which are relatively still new. You want to handle that? Coco asked Yatsuhashi. You're asking me? His eyes tracked as it strode towards them on 4 long legs covered in razor-sharp bony plates. Its skin was black with glowing red spots like a leopard's with two short but pointed white horns over its fiery red eyes. It's tall. You're tall. She reloaded her gun with dust bullets. She frowned and realized that she was already running low on ammunition. That was already a point of contention in the story. Why do you have to remind us? I guess it makes sense. It's fine. It's a nitpick. Yatsuhashi thought back to Professor Port's lesson on the desert-type Grim. He wished there was more information about the creatures that gravitated towards Vacuo, and that he had paid more attention at the time. We can't get too close to the legs, but if you can bring it to its knees, Fox and I can go for the necks. The 5-story heads made a larger target, and he had a large sword. You got it! Coco braced her Gatling gun on the ground and took careful aim. She fired a short burst, and the Ziraph pitched forward as its front right leg gave out. Great shot! Yatsuhashi ran forward towards the Ziraph, Fox keeping pace with him. It went down on its back knee as Coco continued firing, trying to be conservative with her bullets. That's a question. How do you aim conservatively with a Gatling gun? It seems very difficult to do. Fox picked up speed and reached the Ziraph first, jumping up and springing off its body with one hand and somersaulting his way up its side. He then ran up the Grim's central neck, making quick slashes along the way with his tonfas. When he reached the head, he stabbed his blade into either side of it. The Ziraph bellowed and bowed its neck, shaking its head to knock Fox off. Another head snapped at him, while the third tried to gore him with its horns. The creature came in range. As the creature came in range, Yatsuhashi leapt, pushed off one of its knees, and flew towards the right-hand neck. He brought Fulcrum down hard. At the same moment, Fox flipped towards him and landed on the top edge of Yatsuhashi's sword, providing enough extra weight and momentum to help drive it clean through the Ziraph's neck. A long, dark tongue wrapped itself around Yatsuhashi. He waited until the Ziraph drew him back with one of its 2 remaining heads, then lopped off the tongue and stabbed into the neck as he fell, splitting it open. The head fell lifeless to the ground, while the last head swiveled around to face Yatsuhashi. It opened its mouth, its grotesque tongue It opened its mouth, its grotesque tongue emerged, and a black line appeared across its neck, just before the head tipped forward and tumbled down. Fox waved from his position where the head had been moments before he had sliced it off. He jumped down as the Grim collapsed onto its side and dissipated. Coco guided more townspeople to the evacuation in the north. Can't be too many more of them. Coco whipped the beret from her head and wiped the sweat off her forehead. She slicked her limp hair back and restored her beret. It was getting on towards noon, the hottest part of the day. The worst time to be marching in the desert, especially without adequate time to prepare and pack for food and water. I hope not, Yatsuhashi replied. A moment later, he wasn't sure if she was referring to the people or the Grim. But there was still plenty of the latter to fight, and they needed to buy time for the evacuees to get away. Surviving the Grim was just the first step. The desert could be a slower death if they hadn't reached the western shore quickly. If they didn't reach the western shore quickly. But the evacuants could handle the heat, hunger, and thirst. All Team Coffee could do was fight to give them a chance to live. They pushed through the eastern area of the settlements, where the invading Grim were thickest, still flooding in town. But without the high emotion of the townspeople to draw them, they were wandering around looking for prey, which was exactly what huntsmen were doing. They rescued a couple of stragglers from a trio of buzzing lancers. You're interesting lancers here too? How many Grim are in this desert? They rescued a couple of stragglers from the trio of buzzing lancers that had cornered them in their shack. Anyone else, Fox? Coco asked. Fox slowly turned in a circle, his eyes strained with concentration and fatigue. He had been pushing himself hard for too long. They all had, but he, Velvet, and Coco had been up all night on watch duty with little opportunity to rest. Fox and Velvet had already been out in the desert fighting a King Taijutsu. That's everyone, he said. The Grim are starting to thin out a little too, but some of them are still following the evacuees. Damn, Coco said. I didn't think of that. You didn't think of Grim following evacuees? That's pretty dumb of you. We can't rejoin the others yet, Yatsuhashi said. We'll just lead even more Grim towards them. Fox knelt on the ground, head bowed. So we draw them somewhere else, he said. Fox knelt on the ground, head bowed. So we draw them somewhere else, he said softly. It showed how tired he was. He simply spoken aloud, rather than use even a little of a semblance to communicate. Yatsuhashi gathered he didn't have much time to spare. He didn't have to check the aura monitor to know that all it would take was one heavy hit and Fox would be down for the count. Yatsuhashi looked around. He would make sure no Grim even got close to breathe on Fox until he regained some of his strength. How many people do you think made it? Coco asked. How many people did we lose? She meant. But she was always the optimist. Most of them got out of town, Yatsuhashi said. Maybe 112? He couldn't say whether everyone who escaped would last. Several of them had been injured, some grievously, and there wouldn't be much opportunity to stop and treat them, or even supplies to treat them with in the open desert. Coco nodded. Not bad. She took off her sunglasses and pinched the bridge of her nose, eyes closed. Yatsuhashi noted the dark circles under her bloodshot eyes before she slipped her mask back on. It could have been better. We could have avoided all this. We can only do our best, Fox said. I want our best to be better, Coco shrugged. We're still on the clock. Let's go. Where to? Yatsuhashi asked. They're going west, so we're going northwest, Fox said. Get as many of them off their tail as we can. Then we lose them in the desert and rendezvous with the others at the shore. Then hopefully we bring the Caspians back home with us to Vacuo. Team Coffee had been living in Vacuo for a year, but none of them had yet called the city or Shade Academy home. It wasn't Beacon, but even so, Yatsuhashi would be glad to be back there. When we do that, we can do this, Coco said. Hang in there, guys. Aye, aye. Hanging in there, Chief, Fox said. I hope they're okay. Yatsuhashi looked to the west, thoughtfully. Velvet's with them, Coco said. They'll be fine as long as everyone sticks together and sticks to the plan. I'm going to pause there briefly so I can use the restroom and get a refill on my drink. But let me read the current super chat from Ashbarian. Do you think that they should have saved the Weiss character short for when we actually go to Atlas? It would have. I would hope that Weiss is the focus of this volume. I would agree with that. I honestly think they blew their load a little early, especially because they hinted that Winter would be involved in volume 5 and 6, but she hasn't come up at all yet. It's like, what the hell? Just give us an actual arc with her. But I agree. I think they should have saved the Weiss thing, the Weiss situation. All right, so I'll be right back. I'm going to use the restroom. I'm going to get a refill on my water, and we should be able to finish up with at least one more chapter. I'm eager to finish this up. I'm getting good. There's been a lot of good in this so far. So I'm going to play an ad, and I'll be back shortly. are back. Yes, friendly reminder. Thanks to Fatman for reminding me to remind people that if you want to donate to the stream, please do it through the Streamlabs link. I see that Barry in there said that he can't do it because it's on mobile and his laptop is busted. If you can't do it, but just keep in mind that YouTube takes a fair share of the money that you're donating. You're more or less just paying them than anything else. But we are, I believe, on what's going to be the last chapter I read. Oh, wait, what? Did I read the wrong? Where was I? Right, okay, so let's see. No, I'm not reading the last chapter. This is chapter 8. Chapter 9. I can make it up through the end of chapter 9. So let's try and go for that. That's going to be, let's see. That's 158, and the end of this chapter is, this is 157, all the way up through 173, so 18 pages, is that right? 157, 167, yeah, 18 pages. So, actually 19 pages. About 20 pages to go. We'll round up 20 pages. Let's get back to it, shall we? Chapter 8. It is a beacon chapter. I kind of like this back and forth between glimpses of the characters in the flashbacks. Let's just review the plan one more time before we go, Velvet said. She looked around at the others gathered in the ballroom, all the members of Team Ruby and Coffee. They were standing around a large table scattered with Weiss's notes on what was going where, who was doing what, and what was happening when. Team Coffee had been tasked with planning the Beacon Dance, a formal affair that students anticipated with a mixture of eagerness and dread. Velvet had been excited about getting to mix with teams from other schools and having the chance to plan really fun events, a really fun event for everyone. But then Coco had volunteered them for an optional extra mission that had just come in. Coco assured them that they wrapped things up with plenty of time to fulfill their duties, but Velvet wanted to have their backup just in case, and she couldn't think of anyone better than Yang and Weiss, who respectively brought the enthusiasm and the stubbornness necessary to get the job done. A bullhead is waiting for us, Coco said. This is important, Weiss said. Coco's expression didn't change, but Weiss pointed at her. There, you just rolled your eyes, didn't you? Weiss demanded. It's just a dance, Coco said. It's not a big deal. It's no big deal. No big deal? Yang threw her hands in the air. This is the social event of the season. She put her hands on her hips. Aside from, the Vital Festival itself, but this is going to be fun. Fighting is fun, Yato actually said. True, Yang said. But this is different. Dancing is like fighting, with music. And, hormones. Ruby sighed. I'd rather fight with weapons. You guys are so lucky you get assigned to an important mission. Yeah, we're lucky, Velvet said glumly. Hey, here's an idea. Ruby held up her hands, hands, fingers wide. Picture this. Instead of the Beacon Dance, it could be Beacon Battle Club. It would be good practice for the tournament. We could play music while actually fighting. All the best fight scenes on TV have awesome rock songs playing and that reflect the theme of the episode and the hidden yearnings of the characters. I'm not gonna give you that one, but I'm not gonna dock you for that one. That's a neutral point there, Myers. Which would be terrible if real life was anything like that, Weiss said. Oh, what are you hiding, Weiss? Ruby asked. Okay, I'm liking this more because it's poking fun at Weiss. Weiss rolled her eyes. I just rolled my eyes at you, Ruby. I know. I can see your eyes. I just want to make sure you knew. I appreciated that courtesy, Fox said. Thank you. Okay, this is some cute interaction. I like this. Fine, but let's hurry it up, okay? Coco paced. We will not turn the dancing into Fight Club, Velvet said. Cage matches? Ruby asked. No. Rock, paper, scissors? No. Velvet shook her head. The decorations are pretty straightforward. Streamers, tablecloths, flowers. And doilies, of course, Weiss said. What was that, Grandma? Yang asked. Doilies are very refined, Weiss sniffed. Doilies are absurd and elitist, Yang said. What did you call me? Weiss asked. I didn't say anything about you, but your taste on the other hand. Yang held out a hand indicating that it spoke for itself. Fox leaned close to Ruby. You guys do like each other, right? He asked. I'm picking up on a lot of tension here. Things have been sort of stressful lately, Ruby said. She slumped over with her elbows on the table, chin in hand. Sounds like our first year here, he said. It gets better, though. We had some rough patches early on, too, and now look at us. The important thing is to talk to one another. Ruby sat up and smiled at Fox. That's great to hear. Thank you. And I think that's the most words I've heard you say at once. For a while there, we were wondering if you ever talked. She covered her mouth. And now I should stop talking, she said with a muffled voice. Shut up, Ruby, idiot. You'd be surprised how chatty I can be, Fox grinned. But I'm about to use my word quota up for the... He stopped. Ruby waited and then prompted him. Day? Week? He winked. Oh, she laughed. I get it. I didn't know you were funny, too. Every team needs some comic relief, right? Ruby nodded. Then her eyes widened. Am I the comic relief? She shook her head. No, impossible. Yang is funny, too. Funnier than me. She's always saying goofy things like, let's start things off with a Yang. I don't do that. And Weiss is always joking with me. Oh, or is she making fun of you? Fox asked. You think so? Ruby rubbed the back of her head and frowned while thinking about it. Hey, she glared at Weiss. We'll talk about that later. Fox laughed. They're making Ruby almost a little too childish, but at the same time, being childish is still a character trait that we haven't really seen much of recently, so I'll take it. And this is pretty young, all things considered. This is before bad things went down. Fox laughed. Stop laughing. I am not funny, Ruby pouted. I'm the leader. Leaders can't be the comic relief. Fox raised his eyebrows. John. Ruby looked stricken. Then she put her head on the table and hid her face in her arms. I am the comic relief. Coco can be funny too, Fox said with a straight face. Right, Fox? Velvet said. Everyone turned to look at him. Startled, he stood bolt upright. What? He asked. The music, for the dance. Right, got it covered, he said. You're gonna love the DJs. Great, she pointed across the room. My photo booth is going to be over there. We'll get everyone to take silly pictures. Weiss took the list from Velvet and ran down the rest of the items. Yatsuhashi has already taken care of the desserts. Coco is... Weiss looked up. You aren't on the list. Yep, Coco said. Are we almost done here? Weiss started to argue, but then she thought better of it. Yang will greet guests, and Blake... Blake? The bow disguising Blake's cat ears was all that was visible of her behind the large book propped up on the table in front of her, hidden Remnant. Blake? Weiss asked again. Then she stalked over and yanked the book up, revealing a second book, My Sweet Samurai, and behind that book, Blake had fallen asleep. You see, this is what the show really needed. You really needed more humor to it. Oh, you tried the Streamlabs link. Okay, I'll get to that at the end of the chapter. She had dark smudges around under her eyes, closed eyes, from too many nights awake patrolling the warehouses for Roman Torchwick and the White Fang. Wait. That's what she was doing? She was actively going out at night to patrol warehouses. That's why she was lacking sleep. I thought she was just, like, up being anxious over things, not actively, like, searching for him. Holy crap. She must have needed a catnap, Yatsuhashi said. Shh. Velvet punched Yatsu on his arm. Bad, Yatsu, bad! What? He asked. Oh, sorry, was that inappropriate? Yes, it was. I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything by it, he said. She said to choose your words more carefully. Blake trusted us with her secret. Don't make her regret it with your insensitive jokes. Yatsuhashi's face fell. So that's everything. Let's go. Coco hoisted her bag. Hold on, Yang said. What, are we missing something? Weiss asked. Yang looked around slowly. We're only missing an opportunity. What about a fog machine? A fog machine, Weiss said. A fog machine? Velvet asked. Coco picked up her bag. It's time to say goodbye. Velvet and Yatsu looked at each other and shrugged. Well, thanks, guys, Velvet said. We appreciate the help. We'll see you in a couple of days. You can count on us, Ruby said cheerfully. You haven't even signed up to do anything, Weiss said. And you can count on me to follow through on absolutely nothing. Fox pointed at Ruby. Comic relief. Ha! Weiss folded her arms. You totally are. Be safe, guys, Ruby waved. And think about the fog machine. Yang called after Velvet, Yatsuhashi, Fox, and Coco as they left the ballroom. Just say Team Coffee. Blake sat up with a sputter and looked around. What'd I miss? Coco stuck her head back in the ballroom. No fog machine. Then she left again. Yeah, I mean, that was the odd man out so far. He's been pretty consistent with his tone so far. That was the only weird point. But we are now on to Chapter 9, which is a Coco chapter, as you can tell by that little silhouette. An Ashbarian donated $5 saying, do you think Ironwood will make Team RWBY and Juniper Jr., JNR, attend Atlas to become official huntsmen under military control? I don't think so. I think we're done with the combat schools, frankly. I don't think we're going to see them, but kind of like with Volume 5 and Volume 6, we don't really get to see them. We get to just see them in the distance. They're just kind of set pieces, set dressing, than anything else. I don't think they're going to actually be anything. But if he does force them, that'd be an interesting bit of time to spend on different types of protocol teaching. Oh, hi, Sassy. How's it going? Why do I feel like Blake has a character in this book? Because she has a character in this book. Alright, so we have 164 up through 172, I believe. 174, I believe. So I believe we have 10 pages before we call this stream. 11 pages before we call this stream. I hope you're all enjoying yourselves. I'm having a lot of fun with this, actually. A blanket of rolling white mist covered the desert sands as far as Coco could see. Where is this fog coming from, she asked. Her voice was hoarse from shouting during the evacuation and grim fights, and from the heat and dehydration. Not that I'm complaining. The air was still warm, but the tiny water droplets condensing in the fog felt refreshing against her skin. She breathed in as and her parched throat started to feel better. She licked water from her cracking lips. The west winds blow moisture in from the ocean, Fox sent. Ooh, a foggy desert. I like this. This is a good setting. Coco thought Fox was lucky that he didn't have to open his mouth to talk. Their special team speak was a big asset, and they had managed to keep from everyone at Beacon except Professor Gluten. Their special team speak was a big asset they had managed to keep from everyone else at Beacon, except Professor Goodwitch, who knew everything about her students, and Professor Osmond, who seemed to know everything. But now they were at Shade. No one, not even Headmaster Theodore, seemed to know. She took advantage of the open channel. But that has to be dozens of miles away, she sent back. Life may be slow in vacuo, but things can move fast, Fox said. The fog will burn off soon. He was right. Not long after the afternoon stretched on and the day got hotter, the mist disappeared and they were once again at the mercy of the sun. They trudged onward, the landscape around them shimmering so much in the heat that it felt like they were walking through a dreamscape. It was more like a nightmare. Hold up, Yatsuhashi raised a hand to stop them. What is it, Coco asked. He pointed north. Tracks. Coco examined the sand. They had been following the path Velvet and the rest of the evacuees had taken, which was easy to spot, even with the desert's habitually shifting sands, because of the sand had been disturbed by so much by the feet of nearly 100 people. Fortunately, they hadn't encountered any bodies along the way, though they easily could have been claimed by the desert or its wildlife before they passed by. Yatsuhashi was right. Another set of tracks was heading off to the north, but they were obscured, so it was hard to tell that it was one person or multiple traveling. Someone's trying to hide their trail, Yatsuhashi said. Coco pulled out her scroll and tried to contact Velvet, hoping they were still between relay towers. No signal flashed across the screen. Can't reach Velvet, she said. Fox? I'm trying, he sent, but I'm not getting through either. I hope nothing happened to them, Yatsuhashi said. Gus is probably blocking your semblance again, she said. Or they're too far away. Fox turned his head towards the north. I'm sensing someone out there, but it's very faint. And what's that ominous cloud on the horizon? Yatsuhashi asked. It's definitely not fog, Coco said. Describe it, Fox said sharply. It looks like a giant cauliflower lying in the ground. Cauliflower, Coco squinted in the distance. How would you describe it? Yatsuhashi asked. Steam blasting from an espresso machine, Coco said. Yatsuhashi squinted. Oh yeah, I can see that. So what is that really? Trouble, Fox said. It's a sandstorm. At least it's really far away, Yatsuhashi said. Probably 15 miles. Like I mentioned, things move fast in the desert. The desert was formed over centuries, but that's one of the things that does the shaping. It's powerful, swift, and deadly. Fox rarely looked worried, but his concern was plain on his face. We're all in danger. It'll probably be here within the hour. We have to find shelter. Let's hurry and catch up to the others. The storm is going to erase all these tracks, Coco said. What about whoever's out there? Yatsuhashi asked. Coco was torn. Whoever it was wanted to be out there if they had covered their tracks so carefully. But it seemed suspicious, and she didn't like to leave anyone behind. I'll check it out, she said. Meet up with you guys later. Fox swept his hand in front of him. Nope, I'll go after them. You need to see the tracks to follow them, but I don't. He tapped his right temple. As soon as I get close enough, I'll be able to find you. Fox, if you get caught in the storm, you'll be... blind? He crossed his arms. Exactly. I also know the desert better than both of you. And I traveled faster. And I have... Okay, no need to give Yatsuhashi an inferiority complex, Coco said. Yatsuhashi rolled his eyes. I saw that, Coco said. Even I saw that, Fox said. You clearly know what you're getting into, so if you want to volunteer for a suicide mission, I guess I won't stop you, Coco said. I didn't say anything about suicide, Fox said. I'm coming back. Sure you will, she said. It's been nice working with you. I hope we don't get stuck with a weird acronym after you're gone. Come on, Yatsuhashi. Yatsuhashi paused and reached down and grabbed Fox in a bear hug, lifting him up off the ground. Ow, Fox said. I need my ribs and spine to walk, you big dummy, and I'm coming back. Sure, Yatsuhashi said. Guys, Fox said. Good luck, Coco waved a hand behind her as she walked off with Yatsuhashi on a path of the evacuees. Stupid, she thought. He can't see you. Even after all this time, she could still slip up, but Fox had a way of putting people at ease, cracking jokes to diffuse tension while people were tripping over themselves to apologize. He had once joked that he should be the one with the sunglasses. But I look cooler in them, Coco had told him. I'll have to take your word for it, Fox responded. But I bet you're wrong. She glanced to her right and saw Fox was running and had already gotten a good distance away. He really was built for the desert, but she couldn't imagine running in this heat. Walking was hard enough. The desert was almost enough to make her regret her dark outfit, but her clothes were more comfortable and cool than they looked. The fabric breathed well, and she made a point of treating them with UV protection and lathering herself in sunscreen to preserve her fair complexion. Even so, after years in vacuo, she was more tan than she had ever been in her life. You know what would have been interesting? If we saw a tan Coco on the cover. I'm just saying that the artist they get need to keep that stuff in mind. Like, it would be great to see Coco a little tanner than she was. Probably would have reached a little bit of outlash. People like, oh, you're darkening her skin. But then when you explain that she's been in a desert for like a year. Beaches and Coco went together like milk and lemon, and she had somehow ended up on the biggest beach in Remnant. It had been a tough decision to go there. Actually, how would milk taste with lemon? It seems like a weird combo, but I think it might actually pull it off. It had been a tough decision to go there, and not always a popular one, but she's still convinced that it had been the right choice. Vacuo was the only place outside of Vale where every member of Team Coffee would be welcome, at least as welcoming as a place as Vacuo could be. In some ways, it had an advantage over Beacon. Coco hadn't known the best way to help Velvet with the bullying members of their class, since the school's rules expressly forbade fighting other students outside of the school's sanctioned sparring matches. That was one of the reasons Coco had looked forward to the Vital Festival tournament so much, and they gone and lost their match against Mercury and Emerald. Just another one of the failures as a leader and a friend that Coco carried around like an out-of-season accessory. You okay? Yatsuashi asked. Just thinking about our classmates, Coco said. At Beacon, she clarified. Yeah, Yatsuashi said. Sometimes I wish I could just forget what happened, she grimaced. Sorry, I didn't mean that. She was in a rare form today. In truth, she'd been off her game since the mission at Lower Karin, and she kept waiting for the others to see it. Professor Osmond may have had high expectations for her as leader, but he couldn't have predicted this. The world was testing all of them, and she wasn't sure if she would be ready to step up when the time came. All she could do was try to keep it together from one day to the next. Believe me, I know what you mean, Yatsuhashi said. But we need to remember that the bad along with the good. It's what makes us who we are. Making mistakes, carrying their lessons with us makes us stronger. It's the only way we become better than what we were. That's deep, Coco said. I got it from the back of a Pumpkin Pete cereal box, he said. Really? No, just kidding. That cereal isn't very good for you. I always wondered why Pyrrha... He trailed off. Anyway, it goes back to something my grandfather told me once. I've been thinking about him a lot lately. See, there's the whole subtlety thing. I actually like that. It's something along those lines. It's basically you have to keep proving you're basically willing to live there. You're able to live there. I'll address that fat man in a bit. Let's see. I've been thinking about him a lot lately. Because of Edward? Coco said. Yatsuashi kicked some sand ahead of him. A tiny crab scuttled away and burrowed back into the cooler sand below. It was nowhere near the size of a mole crab, but Coco still shuddered involuntarily. That hadn't been much of a threat, as it turns out, but she didn't like the idea of countless enemies burrowing beneath her feet. When I first unlocked my semblance, I did some bad things with it. Some by accident, some on purpose. I was just jealous of my little sister, and one day I made my mother forget she even existed. Yatsuachi squinted and looked off in the distance. That's when I told them about my ability. They were afraid of me. He shook his head. No, they were afraid of what I might become. That must have been hard on you, Coco said. Is that why you don't like using your semblance? Yeah, I've learned to control it, but it still doesn't feel right, messing with other people's memories like that. But it's too invasive. It's too invasive. Even when I'm doing good with it, it feels wrong. Coco peered over the top of her shades at him. So what is it your grandfather said to you? That our choices make us who we are, the good ones and the bad ones. Yatsuashi placed a hand on her shoulder. No one is perfect, not even you. Thanks. I was already painfully aware of that. I mean, it's okay that you aren't, because you're always trying to be better. You're always trying to do the right thing. I think our intentions matter just as much as the outcomes. Coco hid her eyes behind her sunglasses again. Thank you. I needed to hear that. That's why I said it. But I'm really close to perfection, right? Yatsushi put a hand behind his head and laughed. Then his eyes widened and he pointed behind her. Do you see that? Trying to change the subject, Coco turned, and on the wavy, hazy horizon, she saw a makeshift settlement of dune buggies, wagons, and tents. I see it, she said. I wonder why they stopped. She checked her scroll again, but there was still no signal. She sighed and walked faster, Yatsuhashi shuffling alongside her as they approached the group. They reached them half an hour later. The sun was directly overhead, leaving no shadows on the sand. It was hot enough that they were... I mean, it wouldn't be... If you're in the afternoon, it wouldn't be overhead anymore. It was hot enough that they weren't even sweating because it evaporated instantly. Velvet bounded out of the settlement and launched herself at Yatsuhashi. He caught her, laughing, and spun her around. I'm glad you're all right, V, he said. You too, Yatsu, and Coco. Then she looked worried. Fox? Her voice came through in her throat. He's okay, Coco said. As far as I know, she thought. Why'd you guys stop here? We thought we should get organized and make sure we know everyone who escaped Feldspar with us. Smart, Coco said. Well, we lost 2 people along the way. Butterlock and Edward, Velvet said. Lost as in... They aren't dead. We don't think anyway. We just don't know where they are. Edward I can understand wandering off, but Butterlock? Coco said. Maybe Butterlock noticed Edward was gone and went after him, Velvet asked. Without telling anyone, what does Carmine say? She's as concerned as we are. We only found one set of tracks out here, Yatsuhashi said. It looked like whoever it was tried to cover them up so we wouldn't be able to find them. If that was Edward, he might be trying to sacrifice himself to save the tribe, Velvet finished. Don't worry, Fox. Don't worry. Fox is following the tracks. He'll find him. Velvet looked relieved. He'll be back soon, she said. But Slade says we have another problem. There's a sandstorm coming from the north, and we need to find shelter. She says that there are some slot canyons just north of here, if we can get to them in time. The high walls should reduce their exposure to the wind-blasted sands. Oh, good, Coco said. She hated close spaces. It's the best option. Otherwise, we're liable to lose our vehicles and equipment, not to mention a lot of lives, Velvet said. Do you ever get the feeling the desert is trying to kill us? Yatsuhashi asked. Every second, Velvet said. I'd much rather be fighting an Elysian paladin again or a regular villain like Torchwick. You never fought Torchwick. Why would you ever say that? You never fought Torchwick. That sounds heavenly, Coco agreed. I'll take a human opponent over the nature nonsense any day. Velvet led them to the camp, and this is why I'm in favor of of climate change. We gotta show climate who's boss. Weather can't stop us. We fight back. I'm kidding, of course. Velvet led them into the camp, which was surrounded by a circle of wagons and covered with stitched-together tarps, tents, robes, and what seemed to be the shirts off people's backs. Vacuo wasn't a shirt and tie kind of place, but a number of men were walking around bare-chested, and even women were down to halter tops. Okay, Myers, be a little braver with that. Be a little brave. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the oof. I'm not sure what the oof is going over. I wonder if John amplified Yatsu's semblance would be equivalent of the MIB laser. Ooh, that's kind of crazy as I thought. But the where was I going with this? I missed my spot. Oh, shirts off. Like, seriously, guys, why not just say women have their shirts off? It's fine. It's the desert. It happens. Have you ever seen ancient Egypt? Women had them things hanging out all over the place. People barely wore clothes back then sometimes. Mainly the lower class people, but, I mean, all the same. Boobs aren't a big deal. Just say women have their tops off. It's fine. Different cultures or whatever. Nudist beaches are a thing. Focus, Coco, she thought. Oh, she has to focus because she doesn't want to look at women's... She's trying not to look at women's breasts. Okay. I get that. That's sexuality done right. It's a little one-off little note to the character trying just to talk to themselves. It's good. It's good. The makeshift roof may have lowered the temperature by only a few degrees, but at the hottest of times of the day in the desert, it still made a huge difference. How's it been here? They all seem pretty calm now. We've had a few rough moments, but the mood bombs have been relatively mild, Velvet said. Maybe because Edward is getting farther away from camp. Slade emerged from the small tent behind Velvet. Welcome back! I knew you'd make it soon enough, but you're a sight for sore eyes. She smiled at Coco and Yatsuhashi, then smiled and faded. What happened to Red? She asked. Fox is going after Bertilac and Edward. At least we assume that's whose trail we were following. Yeah, neither is decapitation. It's not really friendly. Come on. The flap of the tent flew open and Carmine stepped out, ducking through the low entrance and rising to her full height. Gus stepped out gingerly after her. You found them? Carmine asked. Her skin glistened and smelled like aloe, a common sunscreen cream in vacuo. Very nice. Coco blushed. Not a very Coco thing to do, but okay. We think so. Fox will bring them back, Coco said. Any idea why they went off on their own? Grandpa probably just got confused again. I'm sorry. He looked pale, sweat dotting down his brow. He was shaky on his feet, like he needed to go lie down for a while. Understandable with his grandfather missing. Carmine patted the boy on the head awkwardly. Not your fault, kid. Bertilac must have noticed and hurried after him. Bertilac kind of does his own thing a lot of the time, if you hadn't noticed. Too often, if you ask me, Carmine said. That's one of the drawbacks of when it's just the two of you hunting Grimm. Instead of a team with a strong leader to keep everyone in check, you'll see one day. Coco looked at Velvet and Yatsuhashi. She hadn't given much thought what would happen after they graduated. Funny how quickly she had gone from being a loner, albeit a popular one, to a leader, and now she couldn't imagine being part of a team without her three friends. Raises the question of why do any huntsmen ever go solo unless under necessity? Even Shade Academy hadn't weakened their bond, despite the focus on survival and results rather than teamwork and studies. Once upon a time, she was the type of person who would flourish at Shade, but she depended on the rest of Team Coffee too much now. She cared too much about their well-being, even over her own. They didn't teach you that sort of thing at Shade. She wondered how Team Juniper was holding up without Pyrrha. What was John doing after losing a member of his team, a friend, someone he clearly cared about? It's time to pack it up, Slate said. Get in the vans and drive as fast as we can. We have a storm to outrace. But how will Fox, Bertilac, and Grandpa find us if we start going north? Gus asked. Fox has his ways, Coco said. She was more worried about him catching up to them on foot. Even in vehicles, she wasn't sure they'd make it to the canyons in time. She also hoped that she was wrong, but she was worried about Fox, out there with Bertilac and the old man. Something about this just wasn't adding up. And that was Chapter 10. 183 versus 10, 11. I'm going to get through the chapters because I think I might want to stop here. (17, 18). So there's 18 chapters left, or 8 chapters left, not including the epilogue. So I think I'm going to stop here at 10. I'm going to call it a rest. I think, we covered how many pages? A ton of them. We're at 171. I think we were at like 110 something last I checked. That's 60 pages of coverage. I think that's good. Yeah, there's a few things that aren't adding up. Fat Man made a point that apparently it was vacuum was a welcoming place, but only if you're able to survive. Like, I guess it's non-discriminatory. I thought that was the idea behind it. It's just very non-discriminatory aside from if you can fight your way to survive, you're good. The only type of discrimination is, hey, you died in the desert, you're an idiot. Of course, I love giving story time to you guys. This has been a real blast. I'm actually really enjoying this book. I think some of the writing could be improved in places. Some of his writing style is a little weak. But overall, it's far and away better than anything in RWBY. Big contention, though, I'm finding is that I'm not enjoying the present story as much as I'm enjoying the Beacon flashbacks. I'm really liking the Beacon flashbacks, but I think more so because it really helps flesh out Team RWBY as a whole, and it helps flesh out Team Coco and a little bit of Team Juniper. I think I've been mentioned once or twice at the very least. So I'm enjoying that aspect of it, and I want to know more. I want to see more. I wish maybe we could just get an entire book of Beacon before the fall, detailing these characters in more depth, because I honestly think that we're missing a lot of depth to these characters that we could have in the canon show. So hopefully we get more of that and less of this weird plotline involving semblances and such. It doesn't feel like, it kind of feels like it's running its wheels, especially because you're stuck out in the desert. Like, just imaginatively wise, there are very few things that really stick out to really give you a firm grasp of what's happening. That said, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you will tune in next time for the next stream. When that will probably be this Friday. Now keep in mind there's some yard work going on tomorrow at my house. Hopefully that yard work won't damage any of the important wires for power or internet. But I will hopefully be online Friday night. That said, thank you all so much for watching. If you would like to support this channel, please consider donating to my Patreon, which is linked down in the description below, where I still apparently have the Ace Attorney description. I thought I changed that. Well, that is embarrassing. If you want to donate to $1 or more to my Patreon, you get access to the Team Frostbite Discord server, where I am relatively highly active. And so is Fatman, and so is Tom. Britt is just sort of there in the background looking at us and shaking his head disapprovingly, which in itself is an experience you'll want to have, I assure you. There's nothing quite like it. I want to thank everyone who donated to the stream, and I will thank you all for watching all through this. Thank you all so much, and catch you all on the flip side.